What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today we're coming in with a banger of a video, a true hoot and a holler. In today's video, we're going to talk about whether or not my MDMA use was worth it. This is a series that we kind of made years ago, and I haven't dropped an entry in this in 2 years now. The last Worth It video we made was in 2024. So here I am doing it once again. And before we get any further into this, I need to make it very clear that this is entirely based on my personal experience rolling balls on Molly. And in the past, I rolled a lot. At the peak of my use, I was mixing Molly into my Coke lines every single day for months straight. The dopamine left in my brain was very, very negligent, okay? There was maybe a nanogram of it left by the time I was done with this drug. But I actually started using Molly when I was in high school at the age of 17, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. My use aggressively picked up almost immediately after the first time I used it. I just wanted to give that as a little background for this video, almost like my resume of why I think I'm qualified to make this video. But either way, hope you guys enjoy this one. Drop a like if you do. And now that we've got my past Molly use out of the way, there's one more thing I want to get out of the way. For the past 12 hours straight and for the foreseeable next 12 hours, including while recording this video, I will have a vibrating ring around my meat, increasing my sexual wellness tenfold. This ring is called the Halo 2, and let me tell you, it's got me feeling like I'm in heaven. After I've completed step 1 of my sexual wellness routine by vibrating my shaft, I will prolong my shaft with the brand new beautiful power pump from my good friends at Bellessa, because everyone could use a powerful pump down there. If you don't, good for you. You must be blessed. Now, after I've engaged step 2 of my sexual wellness plan and pumped myself up, it's time for step 3. And let me tell you, the Blow Pro better be ready to have the batteries knocked out of it by my freshly pumped and vibrated self, okay? Because step 3 is the conclusion of my sexual wellness routine, or as some might call it, the climax of my sexual wellness routine. All of these wonderful things and every step of this process is brought to you by my friends at Bellessa, who have given me all these wonderful products to use. And you yourself listening right now can get your hands on some great, wonderful goodies from my friends at Bellessa, because they are giving a giveaway to all of you guys, everyone watching this video, where everyone can be a winner. Not just you, not just me, not just he, and not just she. Everyone can be a winner of this giveaway that I have teamed up with Bellessa for. So all you got to do is scroll down below and click the link for more info to enter the free Bellessa giveaway, where you can win a gift card or toy completely free. Don't sleep on this. I got to get back to my routine. I'll see y'all in the rest of the video. Big thanks to Bellessa. Now let's dive into the video. Now, I want to make it pretty clear that when I determine whether or not something is worth doing in any of these videos on my channel, that doesn't necessarily mean that I would go back in time and undo what I'd done in the past. If I end up at the end of this video determining that using Molly was not worth it for me, that doesn't necessarily mean I would go back and undo all my Molly use, because I still got a lot of benefit out of those experiences. And honestly, I don't think I'd go back and undo any of my prior drug use from when I was younger. I think it taught me a lot, and I think it kind of made me the person I am. And let's be real, I mean, hey, this YouTube channel only exists because of it. So I think I'll let the brain damage I accrued, kind of slide for this one time. But when I consider whether or not taking Molly was worth it, it's an interesting thing for me, because a lot of the other drugs I've talked about on this channel have very, very addictive potential. We've done these videos on Xanax, a drug that mentally I consider myself pretty addicted to. I mean, back in the day, and even now, I still fantasize about being barred out. Blow, a drug that I was aggressively addicted to for a while. You guys have probably heard all about my experiences with that if you've been around this channel for a while. But Molly was something that I never developed a dependency on. I was never addicted to Molly. I would never wake up one day and not roll and be like, fuck, I really wish I was rolling right now. Molly was one of those things that I consumed so regularly because I was already so coked up and drugged out of my mind that adding Molly into the mix just sounded fun. It was an impulsive decision out of me, and I'm an impulsive person, so that shouldn't be surprising to anyone. But my Molly use became a daily thing, not out of necessity, not out of addiction, just out of pure, just lack of fucks to give and just desire. I really just indulged myself in any intoxicant I could get my hands on when I was younger. And I'm going to start this off talking about one of the good things about Molly, one of the reasons that I would say it was worth it. I break these videos down in pros and cons, and we kind of just decide what outweighs what. But we'll start off with one of the biggest pros, in my opinion, and that is the fond memories that my MDMA use has created. You see, Molly is a very pure drug. Molly is a very like, if I had to describe Molly as a drug, but not actually use any scientific terms or describe any effects, I would describe it as like a bunch of like free, happy children frolicking through a meadow. You know, like almost like the Teletubbies scene where like they're like all frolicking over the hill and the sun's rising. Like that's honestly what a Molly experience is like. The best way I could sum it up. It is a very pure experience, and doing Molly with a group of people will bond you with those people in a way that most other drug experiences just won't. And definitely just sitting in a room talking to them won't do it. I mean, it is truly a drug that opens up the mind, it opens up the heart, it opens up the soul. You just start spilling the fucking beans. And I remember some of my earliest Molly trips, just ridiculous experiences, saying the stupidest shit to people that were almost complete strangers. I mean, I remember rolling with people who I barely knew, people that I had maybe met once before this experience, and all of a sudden we're all rolling balls and telling each other how great of friends we are and how much we love each other and like hugging each other. I remember one time I was in a Walgreens parking lot, one of my earliest rolls, and there was this girl named Michaela who like, we were kind of friends, but like definitely not close enough for all this, and she is in the parking lot standing next to the car crying. We're going inside to get drinks. She is in the parking lot sobbing, bawling all over herself. She's like, I love you guys so much. Like, you guys are such good friends. She's hugging all of us. We're all hugging each other. It's like, damn, I kind of fuck with you too, bro. I looked over to my homie Ash and I hugged him. I'm like, dude, you're a homie too. You know, I kind of feel I'm picking up what she's laying down here, you know, like, fuck, dude, we're all some good people here. It's one of those drugs that just bonds people. And the memories I have with it are very pure. When I look back at, for example, my Xanax memories, it's shit like throwing McFlurries at each other in McDonald's parking lots and like committing hit and runs. When I think back on my Molly memories, it's just like my friends hugging each other and like homies being homies and like just laughs and smiles. I don't have any like objectively negative memories on this drug. And it's weird because most other drugs, it's like it might make you a bit weird at the time. It might make you even a mean or aggressive person, or it might make you a zombie, a slow person. But Molly just makes you a good person. You know, in excess, it can maybe have some more adverse effects, but just a one-off typical dose Molly roll of maybe a 0.1 to a 0.2, you know, it's not going to make you some mean aggro person. It's not going to make you a zombie. It's one of the drugs that just makes you a happy-go-lucky little guy, you know, and that's really what I appreciate about my Molly use. And one of the reasons that I maybe would say it's worth it is because just those fond bonding experiences. There's people who I haven't seen in 10 years that the last time I saw them was literally when we were rolling balls. And I would consider those people closer friends to this very day than some of the people that I regularly did other drugs with. It is truly a bonding experience. Now, the problem with that bonding experience and those early MDMA experiences is that although rolling on Molly in the early days was absolutely incredible, you know, that experience depletes pretty quickly. Your second roll will not be the same as the first, and your third will not be the same as the second. And I guess you could say this logic really applies to any drug, but I would argue it kind of doesn't. You know, you can counteract this effect with other things, like Xanax, you build a tolerance. Okay, you just take a little extra. Coke, you build a tolerance. Okay, do a fatter line. Acid, you build a tolerance. You could still drop an extra tab and have a pretty hard trip. But Molly is a very unique drug for me because in my experience, no matter how big of a dose I took or how often I parachuted or how long I prolonged my experience for, I was chasing that dragon the entire time. Do you guys remember the South Park episode where I think it was Cartman on the couch playing a game where it was literally a video game of a heroin addict chasing the dragon? That is for me what Molly felt like because I was constantly chasing that first roll experience. I vividly remember the first time I was rolling, I was sitting in the back seat of my mom's Honda CRV that I had given the keys to my friend, you know, and I had let him drive the car. He was rolling too, so I don't know why I determined he was a designated driver, but he'd rolled more than me, so better odds than me probably. I remember sitting in the back seat, and it was maybe the first hour, you know, it was like at the peak of my come up, and I had never rolled before, and I was just, the music's blaring, the windows down, I was just yelling, just shooting the shit, and I vividly remember saying, this is the best day of my life. I couldn't believe it. The feeling that I had felt in my life, it was the happiest happiness I'd ever felt in my entire life. It was just the purest, cleanest joy I've ever felt. And I'm not describing it in this way to be like, make you guys, oh, I should go do Molly today. No, honestly, this is probably the strongest reason you shouldn't do it, because the entire rest of your fucking life, you will be chasing the happiness that your first Molly roll gave you. It is not a natural joy. It is not a pure joy. It is a drug-induced joy that is so extreme you will never feel it again. And that weighs on you. I know it weighs on me because I spent years chasing that first Molly experience. There's no other drug that this has happened to me with. But to this very day, I'm sitting here sober right now, and I'm getting a little sad and a little upset as I'm describing this, because I realize I'll never have that pure, happy moment again, ever in my life. I'll never feel that happy again. I'll feel happy. I feel happy about things. My emotions are pretty regular now. I just smoke weed and take shrooms every now and then. But I just know that that pure euphoria pumping through my veins, that type of euphoria that I feel in my bones and my skin, I will never experience that again. And that is the one thing that I really fucking wish I had never experienced before. I wish I never felt that happiness. Ignorance is bliss. And when it comes to Molly, it really is bliss. The problem is, Molly is also very neurotoxic. I'm not going to sit here and get all scientific with you guys, because that's not really the purpose of this video. That would be more of a consequences video. But chasing that dragon is very dangerous, and it's something that I didn't give a fuck about the danger of it when I was younger. But once I got older and started doing Molly in my Coke lines almost every day, then those started to become a reality for me, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you know, it really, that OG first roll experience, I just never felt it again. Sure, my rolls afterward were still good. They were still great. I have many, many fond memories on them. But like, God, I close my eyes and I almost feel it a little bit. It's like an acid flashback, you know, when some people, they look at like a popcorn ceiling or like a certain type of light or, you know, a certain, I don't know, pattern on a wall, and they start having an acid flashback. For me, I can close my eyes and feel this shit almost. As I'm talking about it right now, I see the moment, I feel the moment, and I fucking hate it. I wish I never had that moment, because my God, nothing else feels the same in life. Honest to God, I think one day, and I've pondered on this a lot, if I was diagnosed with a terminal illness and given a limit on my life, and I was told there's no way to recover from this illness, a lot of people are always like, oh, I would do heroin. Oh, yeah, I would do all these drugs. I don't think I would try anything I haven't tried yet. What I think I would do is do an absolutely disgusting dose of Molly and really hunt that dragon down. I would be the final quest for the dragon, dude. I would either slay him or die trying, okay? No in between. That's my deathbed dream right there. Just give me 2 grams of Molly and just a couple bottles of water and a pack of gum, just to help my jaw, and I'll handle the rest. Trust me. Now, while we're talking about the effects in some of my early rolls, I'd like to flip to one of the positive things about Molly. One of the reasons that I could argue that it was worth it for me, and the big reason I'd like to give here, is really just candy flipping. You know, I've combined a lot of drugs before, and I have never in my life felt more synergy with a combination of drugs than I did when I combined acid and Molly, which is a candy flip for those of you guys who are new to this stuff. Now, candy flipping is surreal. It is an incredible experience. If you are a drug user who is comfortable with your mental health, who is comfortable with your acid use, and who is comfortable with your Molly use, and you should not combine them for the first time, you should independently be using these drugs on a regular enough basis to say to yourself, hey, I'm comfortable with these. Then you might be fit to try candy flipping. Don't just go balls to the wall and try it. You could potentially have a very bad time. But candy flipping was an incredible experience. I look back on candy flipping and I think that might actually be the one time I caught the dragon again. I think candy flipping was when I caught the dragon again, actually. So I take it back. I said a few minutes ago that I was chasing the dragon forever and I never caught him, but I did one time. It was my first time candy flipping. I vividly remember that same euphoria pumping through the veins, hot chocolate in my blood type feeling, standing in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven while I was candy flipping. And I've only candy flipped once in my whole life. I never did this again. Not sure why, honestly. But I think I just subconsciously realized that I would be chasing that dragon forever too, so I just let it be. And I'm kind of glad I did that. But I remember standing in a 7-Eleven parking lot with my homie Ashton, and we had parked up. I don't even remember why we were there. I think we wanted to like go get drinks or something. I don't know why we were there. But we're parked up at this 7-Eleven, just standing there. Once again, Ashton has the keys to my car, even though he's also fucked up. We just determined him to be a more fit driver, and he had no license because he got arrested for stealing a car and was on probation. So great designated driver. But we're standing in the parking lot, all candy flipped, and I remember, kind of like I told this story before, we're just hugging each other. He's like, man, you're a really good friend, dude. Like, you're my homie. I really appreciate you, bro. Thanks for always looking out for me. All this weird shit that like guys would never, like high school dudes would never say to each other normally, but it created like a very fond memory. Like, oh, it was a solidifying moment in our friendship, you know, a real like reinforcing moment. Like, oh, this isn't just some guy I do drugs with. Like, hey, maybe this is all a drug-induced friendship. Maybe this is all because we're candy flipped, but like it was one of those things that carried over after the candy flip. I remember one time a few months later, there was like, I don't even remember what the incident was, but I just remember the comment. He was like, there was something we had, like, I don't remember what it was. It's skipping my brain right now, but there was something we had gone through or done that was like kind of serious. And I remember I was like, oh, thanks, bro. Like, really appreciate you helping me out with that. And he was like, oh, like, dude, remember the candy flip? Like, no problem. Really, really honestly, MDMA combined with psychedelics is also a wholesome experience in the right environment with the right people around you and, you know, the right quality drugs to do. It is a very memorable quality experience. And that is a huge pro, is that MDMA blends well with other drugs. Health-wise, it might not be smart to do. I'm not saying it blends well in the sense of, oh, you should do it, dude, because no, your heart's going to be thumping out of your chest. You're probably going to develop some damage to your heart, definitely some brain damage if you're regularly rolling. But in my experience, Molly is great to pair with most other drugs. Most other psychedelic drugs, I should say. Most other drugs in general, maybe not. But, you know, for me, I didn't give a fuck about my health. So you guys need to understand when I say it's great to pair with other drugs, I'm not saying like it's healthy to do. Please don't think that. But like for me, it was great. I had a great time, you know? Now, when I talk about combining Molly with other drugs, we just talked about candy flipping, which is cool and fine and dandy. However, one of the bigger combinations that I did later into my drug addiction was I started crushing up Molly and putting it into my Coke lines. In the summer of 2019, earlier in 2019, more like spring, I had been in a pretty rough relationship, and I was also just kind of lost in life. I didn't really know what I was going to do with myself. I had quit my job to basically sit at home and do drugs all day. I'd gotten off probation and relapsed almost immediately. And relapse is a loose word because I was still doing hella Xans and other shit on probation, but relapsed fully. Like I was balls to the wall getting fucked every day at this point. And, you know, I was just at a very lost point in my life, and I really got deep into coke addiction. I started doing blow every day, spending all my money on blow. I would stay up for days straight until I would hear my mom calling my name when she wasn't even home, and then I'd go to sleep and wake up with a nosebleed as soon as I took a shower and just do it all again anyways. Some days my nose would be so bloody from doing blow that I would just gum it all day instead to give my nose a day of recovery. It was fucked. And about halfway through that, if I remember correctly, it was like maybe July of 2019, about halfway through that aggressive coke phase, I had started putting Molly in my lines. My old Molly plug was my good friend Ashton, who at that point had passed away and wasn't around anymore. But I had met this new dude who I'm not going to say his name because it's very, very distinct. I'm also not going to give him a fake name because it's not significant enough for this. But he had some really fire Molly and some of the best shit I'd seen since my old friend passed away. So I decided to reignite my old flame and chase that dragon once again. And what better way to do that than by crushing up all my Molly and almost exclusively doing it in lines of blow? Very healthy. And I did that for months straight, all the way up until the end of what I consider the rage of my coke addiction, which I would say was probably October, the day I got my DUI. That was like the absolute peak of this binge of mine. That was the not the end of it, but the peak for sure. For months straight, I was mixing Molly in all my blow lines, and honestly, I don't even think I felt anything from it. Probably 9 times out of 10 I did this. It was a total placebo effect thing where it just made the line burn more going down my nose, and I felt in turn a little higher from that burn. I mean, I was doing lines and barely feeling higher from the lines of blow themselves. The Molly wasn't going to do much to me at this point. It was really bad. I honestly think I probably did permanent damage to both my heart and my brain during this era of my life. Irreversible stuff. But The Molly lines are really what I attribute some of my biggest issues to, because once I started mixing Molly in the lines, my emotions got fucked really quickly. I had been doing blow every day for months leading up to that, and not really any big issues. Yeah, I had some mood changes, but it wasn't super crazy. But after I started mixing Molly into the lines, there was this really weird effect where I just felt like so depleted. Do you guys know how the day after a Molly roll feels, where nothing is interesting? You have absolutely no dopamine left in your brain. You feel like you want to kill yourself. After I stopped doing these Molly and Coke lines, I had probably a year straight where I felt like that every day. I had like almost a year-long Molly hangover where just nothing felt fun. And that was really difficult to get through. And it kind of, I didn't get sober after I stopped doing Molly and Coke lines in like October of 2019. I was still doing blow. I was still doing other drugs. I was still even taking Molly a couple times after that, but I wasn't combining it anymore. But the specific combination of Molly and Coke lines created the most direct and noticeable effect on my mental health of any drug I had ever done before. This specific combination. And it was just so bad. I remember after I quit, after I finally said, fuck this shit, I'm going to try to actually get California sober. And I've had a few slip ups on the way there, but I remember for probably at least a year straight, just nothing felt fun. Nothing was enjoyable. It didn't matter if I was out to movies with friends, if I was playing video games that I knew I enjoyed. Everything I was doing in life at that point was purely logic. It was purely my brain being like, oh, you should do this. It would be good for you because of this reason. I had almost entirely lost the sense of agency where it was like, hey, you should do this because you want to do it, because it's going to be fun. My brain telling me, hey, keep doing this. This is satisfying. You enjoy this. The dopamine in my brain was just completely fucking depleted. And I think the combination of Molly, the addition of Molly into my rotation really escalated that and prolonged that. Because when I was just doing Coke, it never happened to me. This was never an issue. It only became an issue once I started mixing in the Molly lines and doing it every single day, which, I mean, it's very well known that Molly is neurotoxic. This is well documented. This is not just a rumor. There have been scientific studies that prove that extended MDMA use is neurotoxic. And I don't know if there's been any studies of what combining that with cocaine on a daily basis does, but I might be one of the first subjects to be able to tell you it's not very pretty. And, I had some really negative thoughts in my brain after that period of my life. I mean, thoughts of like, man, am I ever going to feel genuine joy again? Like, did Molly suck up all the stored joy I had in my whole body? And that's genuinely what it felt like at the time. Nothing was enjoyable. And I'm an easy guy to please. I'm not the kind of dude who's like, oh, bro, I got to go on this big 5-star trip to have fun, dude. Let me get front row seats at the Bulls game. Like, I'm not that kind of person, dude. I can have fun playing Monopoly with the boys, drinking Busch Lights. Like, I can have fun, just sitting at a restaurant eating cheeseburgers. Like, I can have fun, just walking around, smoking a joint with the homies. I'm a very mundane person. Nowadays, it's really not hard for me to find enjoyment in a pretty mundane task, but it took me years to get to that point. And I almost entirely attribute that to the aggressive daily Molly use during the summer of 2019. And what's interesting is, about a year after that summer, if I remember correctly, it was like mid 2020, maybe late 2020, I had tried Molly again. I think it was 2020. Honestly, I don't remember the exact part of the year, but it doesn't matter. But I had tried Molly again, and I didn't roll. And I took a good dose. I took a solid dose, a dose that I knew for a fact would make me roll under normal circumstances, and I felt pretty much nothing. And it was a really weird thing, because I remember my ex, the girl that I was with at the time, we were rolling together. We both took the same dose, and she's rolling balls and I was not. And I was so irritated by that. And I remember she was playing loud ass music and rolling, trying to get down and do all that shit. And I was like, yo, turn that shit off. Turn that fucking shit off. I don't want to hear that. And she was like, I remember we got in a little back and forth about it. Dude, she went out to her car in the driveway and just started blaring music full volume, in the car, in the driveway. The neighbors got so pissed. Yeah, it was bad, but like it was the first time in my life that I'd ever taken Molly and not rolled. And at that moment, I think I really realized like I wasn't on any other drugs at this point. I didn't take any acid, I didn't do any blow. I literally took Molly at the same dose that my girl took, and she rolled balls, and I felt nearly nothing, except maybe a little irritated that I didn't feel anything. And in that moment, I realized I was like, oh, dude, I've done like real deal damage to my brain, like actual long-term impact to my brain, purely an emotional thing. Do I feel like doing Molly killed my brain cells and made me more retarded? Maybe a little bit, although I'd attribute Xanax to more of that than anything else. But do I feel that Molly permanently impacted my emotions? Absolutely, 100%. You know, now it's been years since my old Molly line days, but I still, to this day, feel that my brain is just wired slightly differently than before I started rolling and messing with my serotonin and my dopamine and all my silly little receptors up there. It's definitely wired a little differently. Now, let's get to the real meat and bones of this conversation we're having today, ladies and gents. And the meat and bones I'm referring to is determining whether or not my Molly use was actually worth it for me personally. Remember that I'm not trying to say it might be worth it or not worth it for you. That's for yourself to decide. No one else can tell you that. But this is all just based on my personal experiences and for me personally. And listen, you know, I have had some wonderful, wonderful experiences and some of my fondest drug-induced memories on MDMA. However, when you roll on Molly regularly, when it becomes a habit, when it becomes something that you're doing more than like once every couple months, you start pretty quickly trading long-term happiness for immediate happiness. And it feels like every time I took Molly, every time I did one of those Molly lines, every time I took a pointer or a 0.2 or a little, even a quarter-gram cap and rolled my balls off, it felt like I was selling myself. I was selling my long-term happiness for a little immediate hit, and it was a losing battle. It feels like taking a payday loan against your own emotions, and it's just not a very fun time. And, you know, in the moment, it's awesome. It's very fun. It's a very fun time. It's why would you not want that? You feel so happy. You feel the purest happiness you've ever felt. You love everyone and everything around you, and you want to give everyone a little smooch on the forehead. Who wouldn't love that? But the day after quickly becomes more than just a day after if you do it regularly. And that is the slippery slope of Molly. That is, I think, the dangerous part of Molly, because it's basically a happy drug. It is literally happiness in a crystal, happiness that you can take 1/10 of a gram of and feel very, very euphoric. But there's a hidden toll there. And there's also even more devious aspect of it is that it's not actually addictive. So a lot of people really minimize the long-term effects of rolling balls, and they're like, well, I'm not addicted to it. I can stop whenever I choose. And the problem with that is a lot of people might not be physically addicted to Molly, but do you know what got me addicted? Do you know what had me hooked? I was addicted to feeling happy. When I was young, a lot of my drug use wasn't specifically a one-off drug addiction, but I used drugs to self-medicate a lot. I was pretty depressed when I was a kid. I remember my first time going to therapy was in 6th grade. My mom had me on a medication called Paxil when I was younger, and I really struggled with just feeling that joy and feeling that euphoria, and I didn't know what it was. But the Molly absolutely certainly didn't help. And for me, what really hooked me and what made me start doing it every day, it wasn't an addiction of like, oh, I'm fiending, dude. I have cold sweats. I feel sick. I need this Molly to feel better. But it was the mental aspect of, man, I'm really not having a good day. I really haven't smiled much this week. You know, it's been kind of rough. I've got a lot of problems on my mind. Let me take this pill that will make me smile for a few hours. Let me take this pill that'll make me forget all my problems and have a good time. You know, that was the real sinister part of it. You know, it's an immediate way out for anyone who's in a questionable mental state. And the consequences of pressing that button, of taking that, are not always super well known or presented very well. And this is a very difficult conclusion for me to come to because I'm really conflicted right now. I don't pre-script these videos. Like, I didn't have a conclusion in mind before I started recording this. I sit down and I talk about the pros and cons, and then I come to the conclusion on the mic right here with you guys. And, you know, I think the best way I can conclude this video is, was taking Molly worth it? Objectively, no. But on my deathbed with a terminal illness, what drug do I want a giant pile of beside me? Molly. It's a very, very strange feeling. I love it. I love the memories it's created for me. I've had some of my fondest memories. And honestly, if let's say, for example, you listening to this right now, we're sitting across from me in real life, fuck all the YouTube stuff, just in person, and you said to me, Goblin, I just want to take Molly one time. My mental state is totally fine, and I'm only going to take it once, and I know that for a fact. I would be like, hey, have a good time. You know, I'm not going to sit here and be prude and be like, oh, you should never try it because, motherfucker, have you seen my YouTube channel? That's not my place, okay? But what I would say to anyone else who I didn't know for a fact was only going to do it once, I'd say, you might be better off not trying it. Is it an objectively incredible drug experience? Fuck yeah. Are the long-term consequences of extended, prolonged, regular use of it absolutely horrifying? Also, yes. I remember when I was in rehab, my first time going to the psych ward when I was a kid, so technically not rehab, but when I went to the psych ward as a kid, which I got sent in there for drug-related stuff, but as a minor, they only had one adolescent unit, so they put all the drug-related kids in there with all the mental health kids, which was pretty fucked. I literally, like, across the hall from me was a full-on paranoid schizophrenic who was very, very aggressive about religion. Crazy experience, but there was a guy I met in there, if I remember correctly, oh my God, his name's slipping my mind. I want to say it was Joel, but I don't. Shout out to him either way if you're listening to this. But I had a friend that I made in rehab who he was the first and only person I've ever met who called themselves a Molly addict. And he described to me how he would take Molly every single day and all day, and he genuinely fiended for it and really was an addict to it. And this guy had developed such an extreme stutter from his repeated and prolonged Molly use that he couldn't form a sentence regularly. It was bad. It was really bad. Like he specifically told me his stutter was it was drug induced. It was from like brain damage from him doing Molly. This guy, but it was nuts. Like he'd be, for example, if he was like, I walked my dog today, he'd be like, what? And I'm not saying that to make fun of him. I'm not trying to do that, but it was really bad and it was extreme. And he would freeze on that fucking sentence, every sentence. And you could tell it bothered him a lot. And I think if I asked that guy if his Molly use was worth it, his immediate answer would be, are you fucking retarded for even asking me this question? Of course not. You know, and that's, I don't know. I think MDMA use can be worth it for a lot of people. And those people need to have their eggs in their basket and all lined up nice and neatly, and they need to be able to control themselves and have a very strong impulse control. Unfortunately, that was not me when I was younger. So here we are today, drawing the conclusion we've drawn. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Drop a like if you did. I'll see y'all in the next one. Deuces.